Majority Report with Sam Cedar, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
It's Friday, November 16th, 2018. My name is Michael Brooks. On a Michael Friday, this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. All we do is win. Broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On today's Casual Friday, joining us, Anna Kasparian. She's a co-host for the Young Turks Network. We're talking about her thoughts in the new Democratic House, notes of optimism, hints of skepticism. Also, we need to get rid of Facebook. We're going to talk about that and Chucky Schumer, another thing that we need to get rid of. Plus, later on, some people's favorite podcast who they didn't like when we criticized has also gotten mixed up in the Facebook mess.
Told you so.
Why do we always get predictions like that right?
Vindicated again.
Always vindicated. We're such assholes. Then,
chalk it up.
What'd you say?
Chalk it up.
Chalk it up. I said all we do is win. Then David Feldman.
We should go back to a map, like hold up the map, check out the map.
Oh, look at the map. Look at the map. This is the Majority Report saying something was trash, and it turns out to be trash again and again and again. David Feldman, brilliant writer, comedian, host of the very good, very informative, very funny David Feldman Show. He's going to be giving us a movie recommendation, talking about comedy, satire, and politics. He's been at it for quite some time. Seeing Beto O'Rourke and Ted Cruz in Texas while he was there writing for arguably our generation's greatest comic, Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. And we have stories to get to in the fun half. Katie Porter is flipped another House seat in California. Issa, I believe, is gone. Stacey Abrams is pushing forward for a new election as Republicans work to steal that governor's race in Georgia. Florida recount news continuing, not looking great for Bill Nelson, and little man racist Ron DeSantis is the new governor of Florida. Republicans use a congressional maneuver to get rid of protections for wolves and support the Trump administration in continuing the ongoing war on Yemen, conducted by Saudi and the United Arab Emirates. Political prisoner Luis Lula da Silva was seen in public for the first time yesterday at a court in Curitiba. There is an attempt to pin new, even flimsier charges on him. We have a clip from him. It's a little heartbreaking, folks, as we will continue our coverage of Brazil. The Amazon scam looks worse and worse as Ron Kim, assemblyman in New York, pushes for an alternative in the state legislature. Let's forgive over 1 million New Yorkers' student loans instead of giving money to the wealthiest corporation in the world. All that, plus Bill de Blasio looking to privatize public housing as he morphs in to Michael Bloomberg. All that and more on today's Majority Report. Samantha is out of town. Jamie is out of town, so it's the three amigos. Why not?
It's the Bernie Bros.
It's the Bernie Bros. Pure, full Bernie Bro Friday. We wanted to start this Friday off with some fun. And what did you say, Brendan? How did you call this?
Steve Ducey and Sebastian Gorka in conversation.
It'd be fun to bed some like PBS music under this. It's like Steve Ducey and Sebastian Gorka.
I have a different bed planned.
Okay, let's go for this.
According to Senator Jeff Flake, sending those troops down to our southern border, that's just a stunt. It was all for the election. It was to bolster the president. What do you think?
Are we talking about Jeff Irrelevant Flake? Why doesn't this guy just, he is more lame duck than the House of Representatives right now.
Wait. All right. The Mobb Deep sound is perfect, but can we just play that one more time for a clean listen as to what his major burn on Jeff Flake just was?
All for the election. It was to bolster the president. What do you think?
Are we talking about Jeff Irrelevant Flake? Why doesn't this guy just, he is more lame duck than the House of Representatives right now.
Double them haters.
Boom. He's a senator who is retiring, so he's in the lame duck. And just like the sessions of Congress between the Congresses are referred to as the lame duck, I guess he's like other people that are not coming back. So he's super duper lame duck. Incidentally, it's a stunt and a total insult and waste of time to military service members who were there actually in really harsh conditions as sort of a broader test plan for authoritarianism and terrorizing immigrants is the serious lame point that we would like to add to that.
And, there's some like, it looks like Flake might be doing some actual things with regards to some things on the Trump agenda.
Right.
But I don't really want to hear about it until that stuff is done. Until he's until the wrench has been thoroughly thrown in and the machinations are completely gummed up. I don't want to hear anything from him.
That's exactly right. $100 campaign contribution to Doug Jones. Like, people act like this is, you're not Václav Havel. You're not Nelson Mandela, buddy. You managed to endorse a right-wing Democrat over a serially alleged predator. Like, what do you want, a cookie? Everything that it's happening right now with Trump, all roads lead back to a Chris Rock routine, which white people should have never listened to. But it always applies.
I think Jeff
Flake,
Flake,
these people like Jeff Flake want credit for, like, things you're supposed to do.
I think he said it was the best $100 he had ever spent.
Oh, really?
Doug Jones' campaign.
Yeah, wow. Maybe tell that to your son.
Yeah.
Some of these problems start at home, Jeffy.
Jeff Flake is laughing at you when he says shit like that.
He is. He's laughing at you.
He's laughing at all of us.
He's laughing at all of us. The guy got his start in politics lobbying on behalf of, I believe, a mining company against sanctions against apartheid South Africa. Now, you might say that in contrast to, say, a Chris Kobach, who got his start in politics in the 1980s, being like, what's the great situation that white people have over in South Africa? I guess Jeff Flake is better than that, because I'm sure he would say, we learned a lot. Oh, Nelson Mandela. Oh, I saw that Invictus movie with Morgan Freeman. What a great man. But I mean, Jesus Christ. Talk about the soft bigotry of low expectations with these people. They all suck. And I don't understand the need that people see. If you're actually on the flip side, like, people get pissed off at, like, Bernie for saying that, like, he was sad that McCain died as an example. It's like, dude, Bernie's a senator. He has to work with people and build relationships. Okay. So, like, he's not going to be on the Senate floor being like, and I'm tired of the lanyard class.
Patreon.com/Bernie Sanders.
Patreon.com. But if you like this content, please like and subscribe. In the bonus episode, me and my office are going to do a read from Frank Bruni's latest column, What a Loser. Okay, he doesn't do what we do. So, like, relax. They're going to say, it's sad that my colleague died. But on the flip side, people who are on Twitter all day who have no need to cut deals with anybody or have relationships with anybody, like, Jeff Flake is not your savior, daddy. Jeff Flake is a right-wing, a hard, extreme, far-right Republican, as they all are, who has voted for every pertinent piece of the Trump agenda and likes to grandstand on TV occasionally. And yes, if in the next couple of months, if he, I don't even know what he could do at this point. It's the lame duck. It's already done. You know, if McCain and he and one other person that people fantasized about a year ago said, we're caucusing with Democrats for a year and we're just doing investigations on Trump. Okay, fair enough. There you go. You can have your little resistance wet dreams all day.
I'll be like,
but they're not doing that. So fuck it.
Even then, it's like, I want to see it. I want you to have the receipts. I want it to be in the past. I want your accomplishments to be done and accomplished.
Indeed.
Well, what he wants to do is not confirm judges on the Judicial Committee, and he don't
voted
need a
for
confirmation.
Brett
He
Kavanaugh.
can still bring them to the McConnell can still bring these people to the floor. So it's
Do
another
recess
empty
appointment.
gesture.
It's another empty gesture. It's nonsense. He had his vote. If he killed the Kavanaugh nomination, even people like me would have to say, like, you know what? It was the same way with McCain. McCain was totally full of it, ridiculous, a nonsense overpraise. But he did that thumbs down, and it was grandstanding, and he actually, if he knew he was going to vote no, he should have just said it and not had such people, people are literally sitting there to wait for this guy's piece of theater, wondering whether they're going to live or not.
My last hurrah.
Yeah, but the truth is he gave the thumbs down. So you know what? For that day, you had to say, okay, all right, you actually scuttled something that would kill millions of people. Points on the board. Right. Thank you for like a scratch of basic human decency.
Just make sure you do it well and you do it with passion.
Oh, I think John McCain did grandstanding with a lot of passion. But I got to say, every time I see Meghan McCain, it's like, whoa, like it makes me realize some of the talent and capacity John McCain did have, because it clearly did not get transferred. Although they were both pretty messy. And they both love drama. All right. We're going to take a brief break, and we're going to be back with the great Anna Kasparian from the TYT Network joining us. I believe this is her first Casual Friday on the Majority Report. We will be right back. Welcome back to the Majority Report. Michael Brooks here. Joining us now is Anna Kasparian. She is an executive producer and host for the Young Turks Network. Anna, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Anna, first I want to talk a little bit about these midterm results, which actually look better and better by the day for Democrats in terms of Congress. There's a lot of signals taking place. I mean, there's definitely this sort of, certainly everybody focuses on Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, but there's also, I would say, Rashida Tlaib. There's several other people that are coming into the House who are, a lot of them are women of color. They're really strong candidates. There is actually a contingent in the House to begin with, people who get less profile, like, say, a Jim McGovern or somebody like that, who are actually really quite progressive. And there's still, obviously Nancy Pelosi. So, I mean, basically, do you read this situation as positive forward momentum, or do you see it as sort of like we're still kind of stuck?
Oh, I definitely see this as positive momentum. And to be honest, I was one of the people in the press that, unfortunately, on election night, minimized some of the progress that we've made, because the first result that comes in is from Florida. And to see someone like DeSantis win, of course, there's this whole recount effort going on. So at least election night, it appeared that DeSantis was definitely going to win. And it was depressing. And so that kind of set the tone for the rest of the night. But as things progress and as, more ballots come in or the counts are more accurate, we realize that we've actually made a tremendous amount of progress. And what I'm most excited about is what is happening within the Democratic Party. And I don't think that gets enough positive attention. I love the fact that you mentioned some of the members of Congress who were already progressive. Pramila Jayapal is another congresswoman out of Washington, and she's fantastic, really pushing for Medicare for all. And so I think that what we're seeing right now will fortunately push establishment Democrats to the left. I mean, they have no choice, because these incoming congresswomen, some of whom you mentioned, they're not even waiting. I mean, we're in the lame duck session at this point, and they are not waiting to push for real change. And, that was evident in a protest that just took place in Nancy Pelosi's office that was spearheaded by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And we're also seeing it in this push for members of Congress to vote on a Medicare for all bill early next year.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think the other thing that's really different now, that people, if they take a little bit more of a historical view, can be a little bit more optimistic now with the Democratic Party, is that there was a time when, of course, we know that a main reason that, whatever you want to call them, establishment, corporate, conservative Democrats, there's ideological differences, but there's also just the reality that, a handful of corporate sector interests fund campaigns. And so there's obviously a hugely disproportionate influence for Wall Street, pharma, arms, petrochemicals, all of the usual suspects, not only here, but even internationally. And there was this gap between the constituencies that vote for Democrats and who fund Democrats. But what's happened now is there's a lot more, I think, of like a congealing, that there's going to be people who run and get elected and constituencies really around a clear progressive agenda versus just sort of like this major disconnect and a kind of a lack of sort of cohesion and leadership around an alternative to that establishment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And, for all the naysayers who argue that the Democratic Party can't be reformed and we need to abandon them, I mean, that's a silly argument, because we've already seen this massive shift to the left, especially when it comes to the issue of money in politics. I mean, now we have a record number of members of Congress who have pledged to avoid taking any corporate PAC money. And, there have been so many successful campaigns at this point that prove you don't need to take corporate PAC money. You don't need to rely on corporate interests in order to fund your campaign. Small dollar donations help fund Bernie Sanders. They help fund Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and other progressive members of Congress. And, I mean, we certainly saw that with Beto O'Rourke. Now, unfortunately, he didn't win, but I think what we saw with his funding proved that, again, you don't need to rely on corporate donors. So an example of something that I wish people would talk more about, especially in progressive media, is how this Defense Commission came out with a report yesterday, and it got no attention. So The Hill published it, and it enraged me because basically all these military guys got together, and they're making this argument that they need more funding, they need more military funding because the U.S. is deteriorating in terms of its military capabilities, and Russia and China pose a threat, and we need to worry about them, and we wouldn't be able to fight multiple wars simultaneously, even though we're currently fighting multiple wars simultaneously. So that comes out, and it's clear that they want more funding, but there's never any debate about that. Mm-hmm. There's never any debate among Democrats or Republicans about whether or not we have enough resources to provide additional funding for defense. But at the same time, when it comes to Medicare for All, just the mere proposal leads to these fiery debates with people arguing that we don't have the resources, there's no way we can do it. And it's because the very people who actually benefit from Medicare for All are these, small dollar donors. Right. And so there are establishment politicians, period, both Democrat and Republican, who still haven't realized that representing the people and their best interests is actually more beneficial because they can run principled campaigns that represent the best interests of the people, and they can still get the funding they need to run their campaigns. But again, we have corporatist Democrats right now who are fighting Medicare for All tooth and nail, and they're just regurgitating the same arguments that we're hearing from the right, and it's infuriating. And those same people will never debate whether or not it makes sense to give more money to the Pentagon.
I mean, yeah, and a great example here, there's just in New York, there's this trash deal that Andrew Cuomo and Bill de Blasio are giving Amazon, which will be really harmful to the city. I mean, it's going to be bad for affordable housing. It's going to be bad for the subways. It's not going to net that many jobs. It's not going to net the kind of jobs that you need, frankly. And, as a contrast, Ron Kim, who's an assemblyman here, is saying, has a bill in the legislature saying, let's take that $1 billion, get it out of these Excelsior tax giveaways, and just get rid of student debt for over 1 million New Yorkers. And that would definitely have both be the right thing to do, but also pay much bigger economic dividend for actual people in terms of buying houses and spending power. So it's never the spending. It's always the priorities. And one thing I will say on the negative side that overlaps what you say, why is Nancy Pelosi talking about PAYGO, right? This is exactly the wrong and destructive thing to be talking about that incidentally nobody cares about when, Democrats have power and it's time to actually deliver real things for real people.
Yeah. I mean, Nancy Pelosi really does need to step down as Speaker of the House. And that was already abundantly clear, but once Democrats took charge of the House of Representatives, her first statement was about bipartisanship. No, we don't want bipartisanship. How can you argue that we need to unite the country when Republicans consistently and incessantly punch you in the face when they have all the power?
Right. It's
frustrating, and I think what people want on the left is a party that really fights for them. We want fighters, and I'm not talking about Trump-like imbeciles that fight for no reason and have this authoritarian streak. We just want people who actually represent our best interests and do so in an unapologetic way. And that's what we're seeing with some of these new Congress people, and it's great. I absolutely love it. That's honestly what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm really excited about that too. I agree with you. I think Nancy Pelosi should probably go. I don't exactly know who would replace her. I would like someone like Barbara Lee to replace her. But I will tell you she should go. You know who should definitely go? And it's amazing he's not getting the amount of heat that she's getting is Chuck Schumer. Now, look, he had a harder map.
Definitely.
Chuck Schumer is the big – you know what? We'll get to this Facebook thing in a second. But, first of all, just tee off – that dude is such trash. And I'm sure you might want to add to that.
Yeah, I do want to add to that. So, think about how pathetic Chuck Schumer was during the government funding debate, in which DACA also was, an issue that senators needed to make a decision on. And so at that point, it's amazing because it was a rare moment where Democrats had some leverage because they could have easily prevented the government funding bill, right? Unless Republicans signed on for protections for DACA recipients. And of course, Chuck Schumer folded immediately as soon as Mitch McConnell gave him the promise of a standalone DACA bill. How did that work out for him? I mean, how pathetic is that? I mean, we're talking about Mitch McConnell. I mean, he is boastful about how obstructionist he is. I mean, look at what he did with Merrick Garland. He was bragging about that. Why the hell would you take his word on anything? And so Chuck Schumer, I don't even know if he really believed Mitch McConnell. But part of me feels like maybe Chuck Schumer didn't really care that much about providing protections for DACA recipients. Because if I were in his position and I knew that I had some leverage, I would certainly wield that power. And he just failed to do it. And the fact that he was so ready and willing to help Trump confirm all these federal judges who will have a negative impact on our lives for decades to come just shows you what kind of, pathetic non-leader he really is.
Yeah, it's that amazing combination of total moral, just sort of moral nothingness without any of the effective strategic capacity that you might expect from a cynical politician. That's what really drives me nuts about this crop of center-right corporatist Democratic leaders, whether it's Chuck Schumer or Hillary Clinton, is at least, if you go back to politicians that I loathe because of the incredible damage that they've done in so many ways, but you could make an argument that people like Bill Clinton and Tony Blair knew how to be savage in a certain way and win. Now, what they did with those wins and who those wins came on the backs of, I agree, 100. And even whether it worked out strategically in the long term, all of those are fair criticisms. But at the same time, on just some basic level, they could walk around and say, we knew how to win a certain type of campaign in a certain kind of environment. And people like Chuck Schumer are fusing, having no moral commitment to, as an example, DACA recipients. It almost seemed to me, Anna, like he just wanted that on the table to potentially run on to rile up activists versus actually save those people's lives and statuses. And then you combine it with just no tactical strategic capacity. They don't know what fight they're in.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. And one other way, one other metric you can look at to show that Chuck Schumer and, Senate Democrats had all the leverage in that case was just the polling that indicated even a slim majority of Republican voters supported protections for these DACA recipients. I mean, they keep squandering opportunities to be real leaders, and then they'll turn around and get frustrated at people like us who have these types of conversations, or, incoming politicians who are much more progressive, who are fighters. They'll turn around and accuse those people of either being sexist if they call out Nancy Pelosi, right, or of, dividing the party and leading to the victory of people like Donald Trump. But they need to take responsibility for their own actions. And what I'm most concerned about is that many of them, including people like Hillary Clinton, still refuse to take responsibility for their own actions. I mean, when she went on that speaking tour to promote her book, it was frustrating to see how she kept citing sexism as the primary reason why she lost. Now, sexism, I'm sure, played a role, but it was one of many factors. The biggest factor was this feeling of economic abandonment that Americans were feeling, especially people who had been voting for Democrats. And she won't take responsibility for that. I mean, during her one of her debates during the primaries, she talked about how, she went to Wall Street and she told them, you better cut this out. I mean, how pathetic was that statement? She said that during a debate. I mean, it was so abundantly clear that she wasn't going to fight for the best interests of Democrats or Americans in general. So I think that people turn their backs on the Democratic Party because of those reasons, and some of them haven't learned a single thing from that.
Yeah, and to be really clear, I agree completely with what you're saying, and we don't even need to get into this debate about Trump voters. Most Trump voters are just Republicans. But as an example, on my show the other day on TNBS, I had on author Malaika Jabali, who just did this long piece for Current Affairs with African-American voters in Wisconsin who just didn't vote. And it was all overwhelmingly I mean, in some cases, you had labor organizers who had migrated from Arkansas to Wisconsin, and they were like, yeah, well, I remember what Bill Clinton did even as a governor in Arkansas in terms of being anti-labor and not forward on civil rights. And then there was a lot of people just sort of expressing, general discontent with the economic policies of the Democratic Party, the fact that Hillary Clinton didn't campaign in Wisconsin. And those points are not score-settling points, and they're not justification of Trump points. Those are essential strategic and moral points moving forward, which this great crop of people, the Rashida Tlaibs, the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes, the Mark Potkans, the Pramila, and the reason I'll cop to it. I would cite her more. I just have trouble pronouncing her name, which is pathetic. But Pramila Jayapal, like those people they get it. And, and of course, and it's so funny because for the actual like left politicians and for us, this whole distinction that supposedly exists in this argument about whether you're there for social democratic policies and universal programs like Medicare for all, and whether you're really serious about stopping ICE and terrorism and having a humane and for real immigration policy and dealing with police violence and structural racism, there's no division there. It's actually always the same people on the left and most aggressive and most moral position across the board.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that there's a fine line between, wanting to hold establishment Democrats accountable and, how do I say this? And, just regurgitating commentary that actually helps promote crazy people like Trump.
Right.
And so I kind of struggle with that because I do want to criticize my own party. I think that's the right thing to do. I think it's the honest and fair thing to do. But at the same time, you'll have to include the caveat that if, the primaries are over and you're left with two options and it's a corporatist Democrat and a Trump supporting crazy person, you got to go with unfortunately, the corporatist Democrat and hold that person's feet to the fire, push them to do the moral thing. And I think that we can accomplish that. I really do, especially considering some of these incoming Congress members.
I agree with you completely. That's just reality. I want to talk a little bit about this Facebook story. The New York Times put out an incredibly extensively reported piece a couple of days ago, which I think just sort of confirms probably what most people who understand Facebook at all to begin with, which is that like Amazon needs to be nationalized, Facebook probably just needs to be abolished. Just totally destroyed. Mark Zuckerberg actually in a way is totally delusional and disconnected, but seems almost, because he's so disconnected, less blameless in a way. And Sheryl Sandberg is totally full of shit. And that's another early Majority Report call. There's another person that I never showed any respect for, and we're vindicated again. But anyways, besides my pettiness, what did you take away from that story? I mean, both in terms of like the way Facebook played some very traditional DC politics, contra to their brand of hiring Republican oppo firms, trying to even play both sides of anti-Semitism, and also really, I have to say on the flip side too, look, there's so many things that are up in the air about the Russia stuff, but what's interesting to me is that regardless of the role that those ads or those Russian sites or just fake news generally played, obviously Facebook was covering it up and had an incentive to cover it up. And that has a much bigger implication than this or that Russia story. That's a major media publishing platform which is totally willing to lie and cover up its culpability in a whole host of things.
Definitely. Blexit was a huge story because of Kanye West and Candace Owens, but I think one of the stories that isn't really being focused on enough is the number of people who are turning their backs on Facebook and no longer using the platform because of all these controversies, because of all these scandals, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and then, now we're hearing about this Oppo research firm that essentially, spread crazy conspiracy theories that we hear from the right wing, in regard to George Soros. And what I took away from the story more than anything was that at the end of the day, Facebook is a corporation. Yep. And for all the crap that Silicon Valley gets from the right wing in regard to them allegedly being too liberal, when push comes to shove, these organizations, these companies are not really liberal. They might have socially liberal positions, and I think that that's actually the easiest thing to do, to have socially liberal positions. But when it comes to taxes, when it comes to regulation, when it comes to the things that really, really matter, they are always in line with what the right wing wants. And they always concede to right wing desires. I mean, they'll get a little bit of bullying from right wingers, even like clownish right wingers, like, what was it, Silver and Silk or whatever? Diamond and Silk.
They helped get some info to Diamond and Silk. And I don't know why you're calling them clownish, Anna. They're super important advisors to the Trump administration.
Oh, my God.
Jim Acosta got his press credentials pulled like 15 minutes after they went on TV and said to get rid of him. So those are some hitters.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So, I mean, like they'll do a freaking national tour, speaking tour about how, oh, the world is so unfair and we're being censored, and Facebook will, get on its knees and beg for forgiveness. But, when it comes to other things, when it comes to hitting back at liberals, they're pretty aggressive, and, especially hitting back against their competitors like Google, they're very aggressive. But another thing that I took away from this story actually doesn't have to do with social media at all. It has to do with this whole industry of Oppo researchers and the damage that they do to our political system. Mm-hmm. Because there are a lot of great people out there who have flirted with running for Congress, running for office. And just knowing that these firms exist and they just seek to destroy you and do character assassination, I mean, it persuades you to avoid running. And
right.
Something that's never been announced ever publicly, so I guess this is an exclusive for your show.
Wait, hold on. Is my board up, Matt? You ready? All right, Majority Report exclusive. Anna, go ahead.
So I was considering primarying Dianne Feinstein, and it was a really difficult decision.
Right.
But I decided against it. And one of the reasons why I did decide against it is because the Oppo research wheels were already turning.
Yeah.
Like she had already, I don't know who she employed, but they had dug up some crazy nonsensical video where we were talking about Olivia Munn's book. This is like, I don't even know how old, years and years ago. And in her book, she had made fun of, I'm forgetting the name of this producer or filmmaker. She made fun of his genitals. And so the only commentary I had about it was, that's classless. You shouldn't do that. Well, it turns out that the same person that she ridiculed in her book, years later, she came forward and said that this person had sexually harassed and sexually assaulted her. And so what they did was they found that video from years ago where we're not talking about sexual assault at all. And then they fed it to the press, to Mediaite, to be specific,
right.
And made it seem as though I was calling her classless for her sexual assault allegations,
right.
Which I would never do in a million years. So anyway, the Oppo research had already begun, and
right.
I'm fine with it being, geared toward me. But then I started thinking about family members. I had a conversation with multiple family members about, what do you think about this? And they just did not want me to run because they didn't want to be targeted. And it's just disgusting that these industries exist because it really does discourage people from getting involved in office, getting involved in public service.
Yeah, it is disgusting. And this group Definer Strategies, which is the Republican firm that they hired, they cut their contract right around the time the piece was published, and a spokesperson for Facebook, might have even been Zuckerberg's, was like, oh, well, they did things that we don't want to be associated with. And I just think in general, I agree with your point. I mean, these industries are really disgusting and they do have big sort of civic consequences, but people just need to let go of any fantasy about Silicon Valley being any different than any other part of the corporate sector and the negative, dangerous influence they have on public life. And frankly, Silicon Valley needs to let go of it too, because when you talk to Wall Street people, they're a lot less delusional about what they're up to than Silicon Valley people, in my experience. I mean, there's some, obviously there's exceptions to every rule, but you talk to most Wall Street guys, they're like, yeah, I'm trying to make a lot of money. And that's what I'm doing. In Silicon Valley, it's like, oh, no, we're improving connectivity. Well, why and for what and how and what's the benefit? Oh, no, connectivity is great. I just want to add to this, and we'll do the petty part later, but I actually think this is important because what Pod Save America got locked up in this because they have a guy named Tim Miller on regularly who is sort of like their hashtag resistance, like I'm a Republican, but I don't like that Trump is overtly racist guy. And he was a part of the consulting firm that did this work for Facebook. And I just, Ashley Feinberg, basically she has a piece in Huffington Post called What Did Pod Save America Expect? Don't put a professional Republican smearman on your podcast. And I mean, yeah. Like, I don't really have anything else to add to that. Like, again, I just keep using that word delusional. Like, what do you expect from these people? And just because they get that Trump, I mean, talk about low bar. I mean, these are still operatives.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, the hosts on Pod Save America, were deeply tied with the Obama administration, and they're very comfy and cozy with the establishment. And, I'm not saying that simply to insult them. It's just the truth. And so in that mind frame, working with other establishment people, even if they have a completely different political ideology, makes sense. I mean, it's the same thing we were talking about earlier, right? This notion of bipartisanship, this notion that the other side back in the day wasn't as bad as they are now. I mean, I remember watching a debate between George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan on the issue of immigration. It's on YouTube, and everyone should watch it because it's mind-blowing. And it sounds like two modern-day liberals debating immigration. It was amazing.
Right.
And so that provided even more evidence for me, indicating that the right wing has moved so far to the right. They're far gone. There is no working with them. And this is why when I go to events like Politicon, for instance, I have no interest in hanging out in the green room with a bunch of douchebag right-wingers that I despise. I don't want to be friendly with them. I don't want to smile at them. I don't want to have a nice conversation with them. They are, by definition, the enemy at this very moment, and we need to fight them. And so when I'm going there to debate someone, I'm in that mind frame, and we need fighters. We need people to fight against these dangerous ideologies, especially when it comes to people who claim, hey, I'm Republican, but I'm a never Trumper. I don't care, because you've been pushing for this movement for the country to go further to the right for decades. You're part of the problem. You're part of what led to someone like Donald Trump having a chance. And so, Bill Kristol was one of the people on my Medicare for All panel. He's a never Trumper, doesn't like Donald Trump at all, but is also a pretty deplorable person. And so I wasn't going to give him a pass during this debate because he's right on Trump. He's still horrible in a million other ways.
I'm also like, can we get back to not liking Trump is like, I can't even think of, honestly, I just can't even think of the right analogy, but I'm just saying this is like the type of thing where it's like, I don't know, like this is like, I think basically everybody doesn't like Jeffrey Dahmer. Like, this is not something like, I get that he has a cult and he has a following, but this is not like a major accomplishment we're talking about here. You're not supposed to like Trump. You're not supposed to. Like, there's nothing. And in fact, this is exactly what you're talking about with that pathetic debate with Steve Bannon and David Frum that took place a couple weeks ago, because on top of it all, Bannon beat him because Bannon is a better speaker and more in touch with people in very bad ways too, by the way. But and they don't have much of a policy difference. Just Frum is like, let's have restrictive, punitive, abusive immigration policies, but don't be a dick about it with your language. And everybody sees that.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like the never Trump Republicans are people who actually agree with most of his policies. They just don't agree with the rhetoric.
Yes.
Because the one thing that Trump has done is he's been very transparent about what Republicans and the Republican Party have been about. Their hatred for people of color, their hatred for the LGBT community. I mean, he's been their desire to essentially provide more tax cuts for the wealthy while simultaneously pushing for cuts in funding that we, as the middle class and working class, have paid into, Social Security and Medicare. I mean, he's just so brazen about it. And I think that the Republican Party, specifically those who are never Trumpers, are just worried about the long-term damage that honesty is going to do to their party.
Yeah, Anna, I think you're exactly right. And I appreciate your time as always. I hope we'll do something like this again soon. And I'm going to, I don't know, some point when it's cold here, I'll get out to LA and do a panel with you guys.
Yeah, I would love that. Thank you for having me.
I really appreciate it. Anna Kasparian, you can, of course, follow her on Twitter and everywhere else. We'll have links. She is an executive producer and host for the Young Turks Network. Anna, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, folks. We are going to take another brief break here. And I should say, I was remiss. I should have mentioned this in the headlines. This DOJ, that apparently federal prosecutors, I'm not entirely sure how they did this, but they accidentally revealed that they're going to be indicting Julian Assange. And they did it as part of another case that they were bringing forward. I don't even think the other case has anything to do with what they're doing with Assange. So it basically just seems like a kind of very buffoonish era. And I'm going to talk about this more later, but people need to get, and we have fully crossed the Rubicon on Julian Assange's trash. And it's a shame because, you know, when Julian Assange first came to my awareness, when he was releasing things like the Afghanistan cables, you could criticize specifics of what he's doing. You could question the ideology, but it was very important. Things like the collateral murder video revealing U.S. civilian, presiding over mass civilian casualties, incredibly important. Obviously, most of the Edward Snowden revelations are incredibly important for mass domestic spying, for U.S. interference abroad, no doubt. But it's been clear for quite some time that Julian Assange has a political agenda that's at least coalesces with the right. Maybe he was doing it out of self-interest. Obviously, the Obama administration, Hillary Clinton, were very hostile to him. Well, that was incredibly foolish if it was a strategic play on his part, because the Trump administration's charges that have been unsealed are things that even the Obama administration, which was incredibly aggressive on leaks and very bad on freedom of the press issues, actually held back from doing. And which is to say, we'll elaborate later, people are going to need to walk and chew gum on the same time as this, because I have no love for Julian Assange. I have no particular concern about him. I have no problem, with him going back to Sweden or wherever else. But the charges that they are unveiling are a fundamental threat to press freedom, period. And this is definitely one of those times where, even if the case study is contemptible, you must be concerned about the case. We're going to take a brief break, and we'll be right back with the great David Feldman, host of The David Feldman Show. Welcome back to the Majority Report. Michael Brooks here. Joining us now, David Feldman. He's a comedian.
Hey, Sam. You know, I got to tell you, I've been doing this show for a couple of years now.
Yes.
And it doesn't sound good today. I don't know what it is, Sam. Do you have a cold?
Oh, you bastard.
Are you getting your Adam's apple shaved again? What's going on? What happened, Sam? The show used to be so good. I always aspired to be as good as Sam Cedar. Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
How come I never get to do it with Sam? How come I always have to do it with the substitute host?
That was David Feldman, everybody. You occasionally can hear him talking to Judy Gold somewhere. Thanks, David.
Where is Sam?
I think that's off the record, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I don't know where Sam is.
I love Sam. I love your show. I do. I watched this show, and do you know this guy, Michael Brooks?
Yes.
He's pretty good. He's a prick. And I hear he smacks the staff around.
Often.
Often?
Often. I get pissed when he gets angry when there isn't a Lula sound in his sound sheet.
Who says off 10? What with a hard T?
Is this the thanks that I get for getting up at 8 o'clock in the morning and talking to you on some horrible phone reception to be stuck in between like some vertical editor at Think Progress and some lounge comic for your podcast? This is the thanks that I get.
I'm incredibly jealous of you. So
get on the 4-hour David Feldman podcast, which you didn't even give me a chance to plug and praise. I'll go right down to insulting it.
Oh, all right. Go ahead and plug it and praise it.
All right.
Go ahead.
One thing that stands out about the David Feldman show is it's extremely long.
And thick.
It's very long.
It is. It's very generous, and it takes, you know what? The show takes its time and wants to please. And is very loyal and doesn't flirt with other podcasts. It's very devoted to the audience. Very thick and long.
Texts other podcasts in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Other, you know what I like is I like when you, because I really do know bullshit. I listen to the David Feldman show, and what I like is sometimes because you have an interesting array of guests. You'll have people like me or Sam who are kind of or who's that guy? Howie Klein, is that his name?
Oh, yeah.
He's a good lefty, genius lefty guy. And then you have on like comics, because you're like Sam, you're sort of show business adjacent. Boom.
Yeah.
And so and then you have on sort of like more of hashtag resistance types, the type of kind of neurotic, uptight people that I make fun of. And who have sort of like mediocre standard issue democratic politics. And I actually really enjoy those interviews because sometimes you get those people to sort of break out of their shell and I think say stuff that's a bit more radical than they want to say. And then other times you give them like a 6-minute load up question that offends them on so many levels that they're flustered and they don't even know where to start. So you'll be like, I have on, the chief of staff for such and so, or the head editor of whatever. And my problem is Nancy Pelosi is terrible. And, these are people that are going to be like with Nancy Pelosi at a press conference the next day. And then you very calmly and very sort of Jewish uncle-y lay out the case against Nancy Pelosi. And then by the time they're done, they're like, I don't even know where to start.
And I'm never doing this again.
I like that tension. You are a master of the stealth tension creation.
You know what the secret is?
What is it?
The secret to my show is I surround myself with mediocrities, so I'm not afraid if they don't come back. I don't mean that. I don't mean that. No, but I do tell. Well, thank you for that compliment.
It really is. I enjoy listening to it. I think it's fascinating.
I'm rude. My feeling is I'm a stand-up comic, and if you're stupid enough to come on my show, then and you're in a position of authority, I'm going to ask you questions. And I don't do it live. I tape it.
Right.
So I say to my guests who are in a position of power, listen, you're going to answer my questions because Jim Acosta isn't going to live forever, and I can be a circus freak just like him. So I'm going to be real. No, I say to my guests, you got to answer my questions, and I'm going to interrupt you because I want answers.
What do you think? What do you think? A judge just ordered Jim Acosta reinstated. Do you think the Acosta thing is just sort of a sideshow, or is it actually an important authoritarian thing we need to respond to?
It's everything. Right. But, we talked about this on my show. CNN should be spending all its money on lawyers to report what Zinke is doing, how the troops are down at the border. You're never going to get your answers from Sarah Huckabee Sanders. So it's ratings. And, CNN created Trump, and we tune in and watch this professional wrestling. And we try to comfort ourselves with the warm blanket of the First Amendment. But at some point, you have to say these press conferences are a waste of time and energy and money. Go report what the Republicans are actually doing.
Right.
Explain to the listeners, explain to your viewers how a bill doesn't become law. Go, stay on Capitol Hill and report what the GAO is saying and what they're doing in committees. Educate your audience. It's not civics. It's just everything they warned us about when television came into being.
Does it kind of freak you out that, I'm trying to think how to put this. So much of the freak out about Trump from the types of people that were criticizing, right? Like the people who were, and again, I don't want to minimize it. I mean, you should be freaked out about Trump and the whole thing, by the way, the whole Republican Party and much of just the corporate state in general, in my opinion. And Trump is atrocious and obscene, and it isn't just policy. There is a trickle-down effect on culture, and there's no, of course, there's a correlation between Trump and an increase in hate crimes and everything else. So all this stuff is incredibly important. That being said, do you find it funny that there's a lot of people who are ostensibly more, they're in journalism or they're in policy, and they're sort of, a lot of their public commentary on Trump has to do with the sort of the theater of it, the optics of it. And you are a comedian, and on your podcast, you're constantly wanting to talk about the executive orders, the tax giveaways, what's actually happening politically or policy-wise. Like, just that kind of inversion is sort of funny.
Well, yeah. I rather talk about, you guys do it. I love your show. You guys talk policy. And, you enjoy the freak show.
Right.
If we're not talking about what's going on, if we're not talking about poverty in America, and, there's a story I read 2 days ago. I can't believe this is not the biggest story in America. Iowa has the second lowest unemployment in America.
Hey, David, there's a really choppy connection here. Let's just take a break for a second. I'm going to try to call you right back, okay? Because you're cutting in and out constantly.
I'm not that boring.
Folks, that was David Feldman. Unfortunately, the line is bad. No, I'm just kidding. Let me just call you right back, and we could see. Hopefully, it will even out. It's just cutting out a little too much. We'll be right back. All right. Joining us now is promising young up-and-comer, David Feldman. But David, where were you? You were talking about a story out of Iowa. What was it?
Well, yeah, that they have 2.8% unemployment, which is essentially full employment in Iowa. It's a success story. They talk about all the job openings that are going unfilled. Meanwhile, 40% of people in Iowa can't make ends meet. They can't pay their phone bill. They can't pay their rent. They can't pay for their health insurance. That's the story of the story of the generation. And for Jim Acosta to just be wrangling with Sarah Huckabee, who cares?
Right.
You know, if you're not addressing these economic problems and what is ailing Americans, you know, healthcare is very, as the Orange Buffoon said, it's very complicated. Healthcare. Your CNN is to educate your viewers. If you don't explain to Americans how private equity works, that the retail apocalypse 2 years ago, all of a sudden Macy's and Target reported, you know, record losses. That didn't happen because of Amazon. It happened because of private equity.
That's right.
Loading up on debt.
Yep.
And that's complicated. You know, I don't know what private equity really is. Your job at CNN is to teach us how Wall Street works. Who is the enemy? And this is my complaint about the Democrats. Michael Avenatti, who it looks like is, I guess, innocent, right?
I haven't followed that story because it seems like it came out yesterday, but it's looking like it comes from a very sketchy source, and I think we got to practice and I'm not a Michael Avenatti fan, but you got to practice.
But you're a big proponent of
don't trust
believe
right.
the accused. You always isn't that your thing? Believe the accused. I think.
Yes, exactly.
Or is that what you'd say to me off mic? I never know when we're on. No, it's Harvey Levin's thing, right?
I don't know. Harvey Levin? Who's Harvey Levin?
From TMZ. He's the TMZ Trump supporter.
Was it? But I guess I haven't been following, but I heard that this Surefire might be involved. I haven't. It's too. It could totally be the case. And as I say, I have no love lost for Michael Avenatti, but I've just started to. I'm wary now when anybody, you know, who's sort of gone up against the Republican machine like that. I just want to let it breathe for a minute and see what happens.
Right.
I would one way or another like to see him not be on TV as much. Frankly, I'm sick of the guy, but
that's not the fault. That's not the fault of the Democratic Party. That's the fault of the media, because he's camera ready and he's got his link to Stormy Daniels, who is very camera ready, and we need people like Michael Avenatti the same way we need Gloria Allred. I mean, Gloria Allred, if she sees a camera, she'll, you know, she's ready. But, you know, she also gave us Lisa Bloom, who's one of the world's biggest scumbags. Her daughter was defending Harvey Weinstein. But you need these pit bulls,
right?
Like Michael Avenatti. He's not a bad guy. We need him. It's the Democratic Party that we need to do better than Stormy Daniels, even though it is why Michael Cohen flipped. I mean, David Pecker in the National Enquirer and the Mueller investigation. Avenatti, if you go back and trace the fall of Trump, it lays at the feet of Michael Avenatti.
Well, we're not there yet. We'll see.
We're
not there yet. We'll see. I mean, don't you also just though think that I think to me the other problem with Michael Avenatti was it's so Democrats and whatever you want to call that sort of resistance, centrist kind of Trump, anti-Trump people they're not strategic at all. So they go from, you know, Hillary's going to win and we have the analytics. We don't need to campaign in Wisconsin. Trump's a jackass. There's no either massive insurgency or massive, you know, reality of racism, misogyny, and bigotry that this guy's plugging into in this country. There's also not this massive discontent because all of our failed economic policies. We're just going to coast and we've got the analytics in place and it's fine. And then these same people, you know, go from that arrogance and that sort of cruise control technocracy to, oh my God, how are we going to beat Trump? How are we going to beat Trump? Oh my God, we need somebody who can do this. We need somebody who can be on TV. And then, Avenatti comes along and it's like, okay, you go from this is all just a big joke to the one person that can take him on is someone who can do like a decent CNN hit and call Trump a jackass. And I think in both cases, it's like, guys, whoa. Like, take a breath. Let's game this out a little bit, okay? Like, both approaches, both being sort of arrogant technocrats who don't see reality, and the second one being like in a state of total emotional freak out and grasping on the first straw you see, isn't going to work either.
Yeah. I agree. I think I'm a Democrat because I'm practical, and I wish something better would come along that could actually win, but I do like to win.
Yep.
So I think the Democratic Party right now needs to fight. We need to really punch each other. We need to be like that big family who has, is yelling and screaming and punching each other and throwing dishes, and then the minute company comes over, we go, "Hi, how are you?" And then people leave. Go, "What a great family! They're perfect." They always get when we get together behind. We don't even have to do it behind closed doors. We need to have constant, a nonstop fight for the heart and soul of the Democratic Party that never ends. It should never end. The same way the Republicans are constantly bickering and threatening each other. That's how you sharpen your spears. You need to fight each other before you can go fight the other side. We're so afraid of the party imploding, and so we have no teeth. We don't stand for anything.
Well, I think that there is an insurgence of really great new people in Congress, and I think that there are some people including some of them who are not flashy at all. I mean, people like, Mark Pocan, as an example, is a really good congressman from Wisconsin, and he's not
District 1.
Yeah, I mean, there's a guy.
Or not District 1. I don't. What's his name?
I don't know what district.
Randy Bryce was.
Well, Randy Bryce ran, but I mean, Pocan is in there, and Pocan is, he's a labor organizer. He's an openly gay man. He's been great on killing bad trade agreements. He's great on Brazil and Lula, which obviously means a lot to me. And, this guy he's going to get more support now because now we've got, Rashida Tlaib and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And, so I think there is some energy coming in. I want to slightly shift gears here because we got to before we get to your movie recommendation, we do have to talk about your incredibly important role in comedy. And you are someone who has done some writing for really one of the most important comics of our generation. And, of course, I'm talking about Triumph the Insult Comic Dog. And you guys...
I'm very proud of that.
You should be. You guys were just in Texas.
Yes.
And unfortunately, Beto O'Rourke, who obviously we're all rooting for, didn't quite pull it out. But he ran a great race against Ted Cruz. And he also gave you and Triumph and some Smigel guy. I'm not sure what role he plays.
Robert Smigel,
who, of course, is
Genius.
the brilliant voice of Triumph. A very funny man. You had this exchange with Ted Cruz. This is very funny. Let's take a look.
Walk away. And just remember, it wasn't the Republicans, it was the Democrats that took you into the vet to get fixed. And there is freedom on the other side.
I support spaying and neutering, just like Trump did to you.
What is it like when you're there? Because Ted Cruz, the thing that's weird about Ted Cruz is it's not Trump at all. Because Trump's totally like I feel like Trump would probably just push Triumph off. Like, if I'm going to be in a situation where I don't get the better of it, I'm not going to do it, period. But Cruz has this weird thing where it's almost like he wants your approval. He wants to be in, and he just never is going to be because he's just repulsive. And he gets that look of hurt on his face because he is aware enough to know that he got bodied.
Yeah, he's a big fan of comedy. Big fan of comedy. He watches The Simpsons. Robert Smigel is a comedy writing legend. Go look up his CV. It's just incredible. And Ted Cruz knew exactly who Robert was, and immediately started talking about Saturday Night Live and all these sketches. So these guys watch, well, at least Ted Cruz does. He's a big fan of comedy. And I always say, never meet your enemies. They always say, don't meet your heroes, you'll be disappointed. Don't meet your enemies because they're very charming and you fall in love with them.
Ted Cruz was charming.
Yeah,
Whoa.
Of course he is.
That's
you don't get that. Yeah, you don't get to that with that little charisma. How do you rise that far? There's something there. There has to be. It's like
I was thinking oil money. I mean, oil money and extremism.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. And the CIA
and the
Cuban nationals.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of money. I feel
like Trump's line about Cruz's father was the most well-founded crazy thing that Trump's ever said.
Here's the thing about Triumph the Insult Comic Dog, very quickly.
Yes,
go
please.
on YouTube and look up all the stuff the dog did during the 2016 election. I ran into Sam at the Philadelphia convention and the one in Cleveland in 2016, and I felt guilty because Sam was there covering the two conventions, and Triumph had all access to everybody. And I remember thinking, this is what's wrong with our system. Triumph, the Insult Comic Dog, can get into any room and talk to any politician, but the real journalists like Sam can't. And it's definitely something that's wrong with our system. That a puppet can gain access, can go talk to Bill Clinton.
But of course, it's the guys who write and script the puppet who have those concerns. That's like the other compounded irony, right? There's nobody in the press shops who are thinking, oh, this really reveals something about our system. It's the guys who are, and by the way, I have to say, we won't play it, but what you guys did to Mike Huckabee, I mean, wow. I thought, because he is such a horrible human being, but even by the end of that one, I was like, whoa, that is brutal.
This is what drives me nuts about the Huckabees. Brutal. I fell in love with Mike Huckabee. We hung at Huckabee in Iowa in the run-up to the convention, and I realized this fat slob grew up in Arkansas, and the only way he could get out of that trailer park was through religion. He went into radio and politics. He had to rise from the muck of Arkansas using conservative ideology and religion because that was the only thing that was available to him. But if he grew up in New York City, he would have been a completely different ideologue. The guy is a genius, the sharpest mind, one of the sharpest minds comedically.
David, not on his Twitter feed. Not on his Twitter feed.
I am telling you, Mike.
Not on his Twitter feed.
Well, but he has to play to his,
I think that if he grew up in New York, he might be like Bo Dietl.
What?
I think if he grew up in New York, he'd be like Bo Dietl or somebody like that.
I'm telling you, if you met Mike Huckabee, he is in the moment. He's sharp. Nothing gets by him. And the same applies to the I'm not going to say anything nasty about the daughter. Here's the thing about Mike Huckabee, because I wrestle with this. You meet these people and you like them. They're charming. You think, you know what, I can have dinner with this mass murderer.
Right.
And what you realize is it's partly a game and it's partly hate, but it's also dominionism. It's also this evangelical Christianity where you're lying for Jesus. Sarah Huckabee Sanders is lying for Jesus.
Right.
And Mike Huckabee is lying for Jesus and being mean for Jesus. They believe they're saving fetuses, which I am too, by the way. I keep them in a jar in my attic. Who did I make laugh?
Everybody. You scored a big hit on that one. A minute ago with the Mike Huckabee is funny thing, everybody was like, what the hell is going on? And then you flipped them back. But speaking of which, I mean, speaking of horrible people that you've had associations with. I got to ask you. I got to put you on the
spot. I've worked for a lot of monsters. In my career.
There's one person, and I don't know.
Funniest.
Yes, go ahead.
Yep.
The funniest person.
Go ahead.
Who's the funniest?
I think Triumph the Insult Comic Dog, because you've seen who I've written for.
Yeah, no, Triumph is amazing.
He is the most insightful political satirist. I work for Jon Stewart. I work for Bill Maher. I work for Dennis Miller. I've written for politicians. Triumph the Insult Comic Dog is the most insightful political comic working today.
I totally buy that, but I do want to ask you about a very special person to this program. And of course, I'm talking about the hashtag Dennis Miller option. He had a joke yesterday. I don't have it in front of me about how he had a concussion, so he signed his attorney powers over to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and I quote tweeted it with just 2 question marks and then hashtag Dennis Miller option, and and H. John Benjamin quote tweeted me, and he said, "That is the punchline, Dennis Miller option." So what I want to ask you is, you've written for Dennis Miller.
10 years.
What's going on with that, Chachi?
Here's the problem with commerce. I did 10 years with Dennis. He was my boss. I kind of raised my kids on his show. We did very well. And, loyalty is a dangerous thing. Mm. We have, everybody. The thing we covet most in Washington and Hollywood is loyalty. Are you loyal? Can I trust you? And that's why everything sucks in Hollywood and Washington D.C. because everything's about loyalty and not going out in front and bad mouthing people and spilling the truth about the people you work with and for. Mm. Loyalty is what's destroying Hollywood and Washington, D.C. Because people won't tell the truth. But I'm going to tell the truth about Dennis Miller.
Oh, wow. I'm ready.
Do you honestly think he's conservative? You go watch. I mean, this is the greatest.
Wow. I got to tell you something. David, that's as controversial a statement as the second season trebles on I can't even do it. Feldman's on Majority Report like Liberace in Bucks County in 1975. Hold the draft beer.
I watch you and Kindler.
Yes.
And Sam Cedar eviscerating one of the greatest comedians of the 21st century.
Of the 21st century. Again,
oh my God.
Can I ask you the Huckabee question again? Have you looked at his Twitter feed?
You're not getting it, man. It's like, you know what? Do you know who S.J. Perlman is?
No.
You never read S.J. Perlman?
I never read S.J. Perlman.
Okay. You're not getting the joke, man. You don't
so
see
is
the
joke that he's a
going
massively depressed shut-in in Southern California, has nothing to be upset about, but for some reason is miserable? Is that the joke?
He's playing three-dimensional comedy chess that is so beyond anything you, Cedar, or Kindler could comprehend. It is so funny, but you're just limited. You're limited.
Wait, so is he doing? Are you saying he's doing an incredibly low energy, high concept Andy Kaufman thing?
Yes. Did you ever see the Black and White album that he did?
No, no, because honestly, when Dennis, I was a '90s kid, so I guess I could have came across him, but I feel like most of what people tell me was when he was really hitting it was like in the '80s and early '90s. I mean, I wasn't watching that stuff then, man. I don't know. By the time I first was aware of Dennis Miller, he was on Jay Leno being like, why wouldn't we invade the Iraq? Even the caribou and the Anwar Wildlife Refuge are like, you gotta get Bin Laden. Whoa, Pelosi, what a bitch.
No, it's
that's what I saw.
The definition of satire and irony. Say what you don't mean, and be so ridiculous that people will go, oh, I get it. He's parroting these people.
So basically, the one part of your theory that I find plausible.
It's not a theory. I know for a fact.
Oh, okay. Oh, shit. Well, you would know better than us, but the one part that does come across to me, because I will admit to being far too dim.
And I feel bad because this is disloyal, and I'm kind of blowing the lid on Dennis's act. And I did I love the guy. I do. But, like he said to me, Felder, I'm going to trash Muslims. But it's going to be really funny. Most people aren't going to get it. It's going to be really funny to watch Jewish people get frightened by the way I trash Muslims because he's coming for us next. It's going to be really eye-opening and a real experiment, a new level of comedy. But you can't tell anybody. And I said, okay. But I watch you.
Wait. So can I just say, though, there's one part of this that I think.
No, he said to me, this is what he said to me.
Yeah, please.
This is the God's honest truth.
Yes.
He said, I'm gonna wave the war flag in Iraq, and I'm gonna get about 1 million Iraqis killed, and about 5,000 American soldiers are going to die, and hundreds of thousands of them are going to come back wounded with PTSD, and we're going to neglect them. But I'm going to show up 2 or 3 times a year at Walter Reed Hospital and kind of thank them for their service, even though I was against the war.
Even though he's for the war.
No, really.
I get it. And that's going to be like a ruthless satire of the American war machine.
No, he's punking. He was punking he punks the soldiers. It's so funny. It really is. It's like, I'm going to send these guys off to war. I'm going to bang the war drum, get these guys killed and wounded, unable to, get back into American society when they come back. Right?
Right.
And then I'm going to support tax cuts for my friends so these soldiers can't get any help at the VA. It's hysterical.
Get it? Did he say get it?
It is pretty funny. It is pretty funny. But, and I feel bad because, Harvey Levin has been trying to get me to do this for TMZ, but I don't know. I just watch you and Andy Kindler and Sam. You don't get it.
We're just making
fools of ourselves. It's one of the funniest things in the world.
We're making fools of ourselves. The one part of it that I sort of get maybe
do you see how funny it is? He says he supports the troops. Do you get how funny this is? I support the troops.
I'm starting to get it.
They're the greatest America has to offer. I love these boys, these women. They're the best. I love them so much, right? Wave the flag. Now I'm going to go send them into a war over nothing. And when they come back, I'm going to demand tax cuts so I get to keep my money and they don't get the medicine they need at the VA. Come on, man.
Call back.
Yeah. Come on.
And I kind of get it because it does seem like he has a lot of contempt for Bill O'Reilly in their exchanges. I do see that.
Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly.
He's
right.
Jesus. Okay, so that's that's amazing. So what a lot of us had thought was this sort of like first an incredibly cynical opportunity to cash in during the Bush era, and now it's just sort of petered off into this kind of like sad, depressing, exhausted thing is actually just a brilliant act of subversive comedy.
It's the best. It is. It is. It's what Colbert wouldn't even dream of doing when he was playing the fake conservative. It's another level of Colbert that you don't get. You're not smart enough to get it. You and Andy Kindler and Sam.
Yep.
You're making fun of something that you don't even understand. How dare you?
I'm embarrassed. Frankly, we should all be embarrassed. And you said that Sam should be able to get into all parts of a political convention before. It doesn't seem very discerning to me. Following the boat on those guys. They actually know Dennis. I'm just tagging along. I'm like the young hitman.
I feel bad. I feel disloyal. Telling you that
For spilling
he's
the
not
beans.
really. Yeah, he's not really anyway, let's move on.
Okay. Well, David, look, we only have a couple minutes left, but you do have a film recommendation for us. We're actually going to keep format here a little bit. What is that film recommendation?
My favorite movie is Diabolique because it's obscure, it's French, black and white, so everybody listening right now will not have seen it, so I can pretty much say whatever I want about it, and they're going to go, oh, he's really bright.
Film guy Matthew probably has seen it.
It is. Have you ever seen Diabolique?
No, I haven't. Tell me about it.
I cannot recommend it. It's seriously. It's a psychological thriller. It was directed. I think it was like back in 1955. Directed by Henry Clouseau, and I don't think I'm pronouncing that properly. Let me try again. 1955. Did I get? Did I say that?
Let's get you on. What is it? TMC? What is the Turner?
TMZ?
No. Turner Broadcasting. Turner.
It's always
Turner
it's
Classic
always
Movies.
on.
Right?
It's always on TCM.
Oh, TCM with our buddy Ben Mankiewicz over there.
Yes,
yeah.
I always watch TMJ. Their movies are jaw-droppingly painful. TMJ. Believe me, there's a person who knows Andy Kindler who's looking up TMJ and right now going, that wasn't worth the trip on that joke.
So tell us about it. We have it up on screen here. I got it. The poster looks very disturbing. It's good.
It's directed by Henry Clouseau. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right.
Henri George Clouseau.
Yeah, let me repronounce it. Directed, I think. It was right after he directed. It was right after he directed Wages of Fear, which from the title you can tell is about working at Walmart. I'm going to wait for the laugh, and we move on. Wages of Fear. But I really Alfred Hitchcock saw Diabolique and he crapped his pants. But by then it was 1955, and what? What you thought I was? What did you think I was going to say? I was just going to say that by 1955 he was crapping his pants 3 times a day. What did you think I was?
No, I liked it. I liked it. Hey, Alfred Hitchcock fucking crapped himself over this flick. It's French.
He actually optioned the movie, and he wanted to make an American version of the film. It never happened, but it inspired Psycho.
Okay.
And Robert Bloch, who wrote the book that Psycho is based on, Eleanor Roosevelt's autobiography. Woman.
Oh, you're wrong for that one. You're wrong. You're wrong for that one.
She's an insatiable psycho, Eleanor Roosevelt.
The greatest people in American history. How dare you?
Anytime I get to trash Eleanor Roosevelt and her effing human rights in the UN. But no, Robert Bloch wrote the novel Diabolique, and he says, Robert Bloch wrote the movie, wrote the book Psycho,
right?
But he says Diabolique is his favorite horror film, right after Liz Taylor and Eddie Fisher's wedding movies.
I know I'm supposed to laugh at that one, but I don't get the reference.
It's the rhythm.
So I'll support you.
It takes place in a boarding school. It has a swimming pool, a corpse, lust, adultery, deceit, despair, ambition, teachers, schoolboys. It's kind of like Sam Cedar's first year at Exeter.
I don't think he went to Exeter, but I buy it. His first year at Conn College. What was it more like? His first year at Conn College was probably like, I don't know, student government, Hebrew student union, government class, being annoying, and student newspaper or something. I don't know.
Anyway, so go see Diabolique, and you're not allowed to. They say at the beginning, please don't tell us how this movie ends. It has a surprise ending. They beg you not to ruin it, so you're not allowed to tell anybody how it ends. But I'm going to tell you how it ends. DeSantis wins after a manual recount.
Yes, exactly.
Hey,
we're in
Florida, huh? I don't want to say there are a lot of old people in Florida, but even their voting machines are irregular. Even their voting machine.
Hey,
Maybe
David, before
hang on. You got to let me hear that again. Trump is actually for a manual count, but only if it means counting up everyone named Manuel and sending them back to Mexico.
Hey, David, I actually have to ask you before we leave.
They let
here we go.
Now they let felons vote in Florida. Too bad they also let them get elected governor.
Boom.
Okay.
No, that's true. Rick, look it up. Rick Scott, new future U.S. Senator, Medicare fraud. Look it up.
Eleanor Roosevelt, she'd make a vibrator go limp.
And FDR is like, that's what I said. Not
really
enough that we're related. All right.
Do you really think FDR couldn't walk? Come on. Some guys say, honey, I got to leave you. I'm in the CIA or the OSS back then. Roosevelt said, honey, look at me. I'm in this chair. Go find somebody else. Then he'd get up and pull a Guy Caballero from SCTV. Look that one up. Wasn't worth the trip. Not worth the trip.
David, I have to ask you before you go and cut this interview mercifully short. Did you ever write any of those Dennis Miller sort of like, it's like this, it's like that,
yes.
and then it's like that? Ba-ba.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what is the formula for that joke? Because I would like it for future reference when I'm making fun of them.
Mortgage, wife, kids, gun to the head, and the fear of never working again. It's very simple.
All right, I was hoping more for the actual joke, but fair enough. But I wanted to do
are they similes?
I don't know. So it's like I liked because I like now how they're so. I feel like even relative to a couple years ago, there's also the one where we had to do this a while ago where all of his cultural, like he was explaining like millennials hate Hillary Clinton because she's like Karen's mom in Goodfellas. It's like, yeah, that right on time reference.
Yeah, but I get that. I totally get that. See, that was the good thing about with Dennis. He couldn't fire me, and Lord knows he wanted to. But I was the only one who got all his references, and he knew that.
I see. It's
so
like
I was living proof that he wasn't. I was the proof he wasn't insane. I love the guy. I really do. Here's the problem. I love Dennis Miller. He changed my life. He taught me how to write. He really did, and he was very generous. And I love the guy. I do. He has a psychological defect, and that is what the Republican Party is comprised of. They're people who are deeply, deeply disturbed. They won't come to terms with their psychological inadequacies. They go, "Oh, I'm not filled with rage, hate, and fear. I'm a Republican. I'm not a misogynist. I'm not talking about Dennis. I'm just talking about Republicans.
Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yeah, I'm not a misogynist. I'm not a racist.
Right.
I'm not impotent. I'm not sexually dysfunctional. I'm not closeted gay. I'm a Republican.
Right.
And you go and hang out with these people, and they all share one trait, and I mean this. They smell. They are I'm being serious. They are rotting.
It's all the cortisol. It's the cortisol shooting through their system.
They are rotting from the inside. And, you don't hate them. Don't hate them. Don't argue with them. At Thanksgiving, just smile and ignore them.
Sounds like you're a fucking sellout.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to work on a joke here. Forget it. Okay,
I wanted to give you that impression because I know you enjoy that one as well. All right, David Feldman, please, everybody subscribe to David Feldman's great podcast.
You're on today. You're on my show today.
Oh, terrific.
And you're great.
I really appreciate it. I have a lot of fun. And you will get this great buffet of comedy, of political analysis, and a lot of just American historical awareness and a really deep probing into the psyche of Eleanor Roosevelt, which I'd never encountered before. If you check out David's show.
You know, I don't like to joke about Eleanor Roosevelt. She deflowered my grandmother. So
Everybody check out David Feldman. David, I love you. Thank you.
I love Eleanor Roosevelt.
Of course, we all love Eleanor Roosevelt.
Yeah, I love her.
All right. I love you too. All right.
I love you too.
Thanks, David.
All right. Hey, are we off the air? Because you were so much better than Sam. He's an asshole.
And completed. Perfect call. All right. Thank you, brother.
Okay.
Right,
thank you.
Bye. All right, folks. David Feldman's podcast is a lot of fun. And very much, I would say, in the that's one you could say with a lot of confidence. If you like Majority Report, you'll almost certainly like the David Feldman Show. Come see us at the Bell House on January 13th as part of Podfest. Get your tickets on the Majority.fm homepage. And then, while you're there, get your tickets to the Michael Brooks Show February 1st, also at the Bell House, with the whole Michael Brooks Show crew and special guests, Lona Minkowski, Trevor Beaulieu, and Bhaskar Sunkara. It's going to be incredibly fun. Subscribe to the Michael Brooks Show, patreon.com/TMBS. Tonight, we're doing a Friday show because there's no TMBSs next week, although we're unlocking several illicit histories and broadcasting them all over Patreon and iTunes so people can get a sense of the show. But tonight, streaming on the Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel, we're doing a full show, and we have two guests, ContraPoint and crew, Corey Pine. We're live, Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel at 7 p.m. Matt, what's cooking with Literary Hangover?
Yeah, there's going to be a new episode on Hope Leslie coming out tomorrow, and I'm going to also release the rest of the volume 1 of that book so people can listen to it. It's covering as far as I've recorded and narrated, so look out for that this weekend.
Sweet. And, of course, Jamie's in Mexico. Check out the Antifada, new shows on Greece. We're going to take a break and be back in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.